When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel.
Okay, shalom, shalom, everybody. Thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule this morning to be with your brother Kassad as we go into, I believe, is going to be another dynamic lesson. I pray that everyone pay very close attention to the class, the presentation that we'll be doing today. It's entitled Abraham, the prototype of the Melchizedek order. Once again, Abraham, the prototype of the Melchizedek order. I believe that it's very important that we understand where we're at today. When I say today, I'm meaning the last time, the last days. And I believe that this Melchizedek order is going to help us to get a better understanding on where we are at, as opposed to what happened at the first century, at the time of the Mashiach's ministry, and what order were we under at that time? Again, what order was Israel under during the first century? All right, so I have a lot that I have to say. Bring out your pen, your paper, your Bible. We're going to be going through some things today, all right? And I believe it's going to help clear up a lot of the misunderstanding on how we're supposed to be doing scripture today. So we're going to start off, Mr. Picard, with the Father's Prayer in Hebrew, and we're going to do it in English. And from that point going forward, we're going to go ahead and let the ball roll. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudash Shemka, O Yit Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiyeh Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ayin Latmenu Tamadit, Umakul Lanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Mu Khalim, U Atabi Anu Layide, Nasayon, U Shan Ranu Makal Ra. All esteem belongs to the Father. And we thank the Father for sending his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. And not just the nation of Israel only. I believe through scripture, it is our responsibility to be the light for the other nations. That was the original design for the nation of Israel that we were commissioned to do when we said, I do, at Mount Sinai. This because we're going to also do it in English, all right? So we want to make sure that if something is being said in another language, we want to make sure, which is Hebrew, I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm coming from off the book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, beginning at verse 9, when we begin to read the Father's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I just want to elaborate on something here a little bit. Thy will, the Father's will, be done on earth as it is in heaven. So give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and again, all esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. Mr. Carl, the reason why I wanted to make sure that I homed in on that in heaven and on earth, Bashamayim Baretz. The best way that I can describe this is the righteousness, the loyalty, the majestic reign of righteousness in heaven is supposed to be mirrored here on earth, and we don't have it. And that's a major problem. And so I believe that it is very important for us to read the scriptures from a Hebraic perspective, understand the language, and I believe that those things will help us to get a whole lot further in our understanding of scripture here. So I have a depiction here, all right, of a man blessing another man. And I believe that one of the most dynamic characters in scripture is Abraham, and understanding what exactly happened when Melchizedek actually Baruch blessed Abraham. What does that mean? Before I get started, Mr. McCart, I want to give thanks again to the Father, the creator of all things, for sending his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. I want to also thank Moreh Eliyahu, Moreh Abad Yahu, for coming through with the dynamic lessons that they're doing, sharing with the family how important it is for us to understand the Melchizedek order. And I also want to thank my brother Mikael from California, who I also gave a phone call, and within 1 hour, he said, listen, Kassad, I got what you're looking for, all right? If you need some more information on the Melchizedek order, and bringing it to the audience and sharing with them where we're coming from, I had this information from Moreh Eliyahu, Moreh Abad Yahu, and when I called Mikael from California, they had this information for me inside of an hour. There is so much information to share on the supremacy of the Melchizedek order. It is unbelievable. For anyone to try to go backwards into the Aaronic priesthood and those enactments, I just can't see it. I really can't see how a person can now not recognize the full supremacy of the Melchizedek order. I know brother Mikael and I, we had a nice conversation yesterday. And what I believe what is happening is that with the side of our studies, we're not looking at what happened at, for example, the Council of Trent, and looking at those four gospels. Those four gospels, what I'm finding interesting is that if we don't look at the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Trent, and what happened in April the 8th, 1546, again, April the 8th, 1546, where you had now it was called the Decree Concerning Council, Canonical Scriptures, where Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John was actually codified now by the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church now making these writings official. And we can only see that in its fullness when we begin to look at what is happening in the book of Daniel, the 8th, 9th, and 10th chapter. To exclude history from the scriptures, I believe a brother or sister is doing him or herself a disservice. We have to understand what happened in April the 8th, 1546, when the decree became official, explicitly naming the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John as official canonized writings. So if we was to go outside of what the adversary is telling us to read, you are now, even today, amongst our own people, you're looked up or you're looked as a heretic. Who told you to read the Dead Sea Scrolls? Who told you to read the book of Hebrews? Who told you to read the book of Jasher? Who told you to do that? Those have not been canonized by the Roman Catholic Church. And so as Mikael and we were talking yesterday, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, it seems to me, based upon what I'm hearing, people are looking at the Bible as, when I say the Bible, what we have to be codified as, this is it. They want a book that is neatly compacted, wrapped up in a nice shiny box, and all of the information is only within inside of that perimeter. Anything outside of that perimeter, I don't want to acknowledge it. A good researcher, a good studier should be out of this mindset in believing that the adversary gave us all of the necessary tools to use in helping us to understand how to look at Scripture. That floors me. It really, really floors me where we don't want to go outside of the scope. But we're going to talk about some stuff here. And again, this dogmatic concept or idea, while Christians had universally used these four Gospels since the late 2nd century, absolutely. Trent was the first time the Roman Catholic Church dogmatically and infallibly bound this exact list to canon law under pain of excommunication. Excommunication. It is so identical as I brought out last week and the week before that. There was a decree made in Israel during the 1st century. If anyone of the rabbinical circle, anyone acknowledged the Mashiach, they were to be excommunicated. That whole idea did not stop during the 1st century. It still exists today. Mishpachar, I'm sharing with you, and only thing that I can do, as I'm doing, and I know for a fact, Moreh Eliyahu is doing, Moreh Abad Yahu is doing, and Moreh, because again, I never heard him claim the title, but the brother, Mikael from California, has a wealth of information to share, and we're going to be demonstrating some of that stuff here this morning. So, Mishpachar, hold on to your seats. Let's do what we do. Let's get the ball rocking and rolling, all right? This majestic order is so important, and I find very interesting. I remember my brother as early as yesterday, all right? Mikael from California, he said, listen, Kassad, I have to talk to you. I said, my brother, okay, I'm gonna get right back with you. And I said, it almost slipped my mind. And just to show you now how the Father is working, let's look at the Order of Ancients, the 16th chapter. Now remember, the Bible only talks about two orders, the Levitical order and the Melchizedek order. I'm arguing that there was no such thing as a Levitical order. When Adam was expelled from the garden, we teach and believe on this physical terrain here, Adam was a Melchizedek priest. A priest. From the time that Adam was expelled from the garden, the Father did not leave the people without a priest. There was always a way to reconnect back to the Father. Always. Watch this now. In the Order of Ancients, the 16th chapter, when a man desires to enter the covenant and take upon himself the ordinances of Elohim's house, thereby aligning himself with the congregation of the Kodashim. Watch this now, because this is the same practice that the Qumran community was doing during the first century. Just as Mikael and we was talking yesterday, this is one big jigsaw puzzle, and the pieces are all over the place. It is our responsibility, once again, as Mikael and I have been talking about, Moreh Eliyahu and I, and Moreh Abad Yahu and I have been talking about for years. This is one big jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces are scattered all over the place. Watch, because I do believe in oral tradition. I do. But that foolishness that was going on during the first century, the leaven of the Pharisees, that needs to be addressed. And listen, I've been in this thing for a very long time, and I am no longer closing my eyes to the obvious. There was a problem during the first century, the reason why the Mashiach had to come. Watch this now. Thereby aligning himself with the congregation of the Kodashim, he is to be interviewed to determine his conduct in life, his relationship with his fellow men, and his adherence to correct principles and the true doctrines of the Shamayim. To come into this consciousness, Mishpachah, what I'm trying to share with you, you have to make a full conscious understanding that this is what you want to do. And there were men in place who understood the importance of the Kodashim. If you wanted to be part of that congregation, you had to go through an interview to see whether or not this is exactly what you wanted to do. When the Mashiach chose his Talmudim, his disciples, they were being groomed. They were being groomed. And when they were properly groomed and they got to the level of consciousness where they were able to now go out and do the ministry, they were doing the ministry behind the master teacher, Yahushua HaMashiach. And I'm only arguing that during the first century, the master teacher was Yahushua HaMashiach and not the Pharisees. They were not the master teachers. And I'm even going to go back even further than that. But there were always a master teacher in every generation. Every generation. And this is the reason why it is very important for us to understand who was Abram. And as he grew with this relationship with the Father, his name was changed from Abram to Abraham, one of the most profound figures in the scripture. And the Mashiach shared that. with the Pharisees. Watch this now. If you were of Abraham, you would do the works and the deeds of Abraham. I didn't say that. That's scripture. And then when a person now closely look at the audience who the Mashiach was speaking to during the first century, why can't we see that he was referring to or having this conversation in regards to the religious leaders? Watch this now. Verse 2. He who is found acceptable, because you had to be found acceptable, shall enter the order of Tanak, Enoch, after the Aaronic order, where through obedience to the word of Elohim and the instructions of those who preside over him in the kahunah. The original settings of the Aaronic priesthood from the very beginning, the way that Moses prescribed the instructions to the Levites, it was correct in helping Israel to understand. Now that you're under the permissive will of the Father, the permissive will of the Father now through the animal sacrificing is supposed to redirect you back into the rightful priesthood, which is the Melchizedek priesthood. That is the only true priesthood, the Melchizedek priesthood, which is the perfect will of the Father. This is the reason why I brought out earlier in the book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, beginning at verse 9. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I'm here to argue that Abraham was not justified through animal sacrifices. It said through his emunah, his faith. Now, faith without works is dead. I understand that. Abraham began to operate in faith when he was asked, listen, I need for you now to remove yourself from this particular environment so that I can have this divine relationship with you. And Abraham moved as the Father shared with him how to move. What are we doing with that? Watch this now. He who is found acceptable shall enter into the order of Tanak after the Aaronic order, where through obedience to the word of Elohim and the instructions of those who preside over him in the kahunah, he may progress, watch this now, from one degree to another until he enters into the order of the Father, the most Kodesh of all. We can't see how, but watch this now, Kasad. That's not in the canonized writings of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But nobody wants to study the Melchizedek order, the Dead Sea Scrolls. When we begin to even look at the Sephirot and even begin to look at the ministry of the Mashiach, it was always about raising our level of consciousness. And it is not done through animal sacrificing. I always call the animal sacrificing it's like a narcissist behavior where the person isn't actually taking on the responsibility, him or herself, on the crime that he or she might have done. They're going to throw that guilt on something else and the person not be held responsible for it. And Israel still has this mindset today. Mishpachah, I'm going back and forth. during the time of Abraham, even to present time, 2026, with these enactments. And I'm going to do a list of these enactments and some of the gross things that we see that these Pharisees are holding as enactments, even to this day, where if a person needed to relieve himself on the Shabbat, he cannot tear toilet paper. If he tears toilet paper on the Shabbat after he relieves himself, he's broken the Shabbat. Google it and ask Google, is it a rabbinical teaching today that if a person wanted to relieve himself on the Shabbat and tears a piece of toilet paper, that person is now in violation? It gets worse than that. I'm here to argue that Torah is not difficult like that. And then now what I hear is that, you know what? They call it exegetical acrobatics. Exegetical acrobatics. When you begin to look at some of these enactments, well, Kassad, you know what? That's not what it really means. What it is saying is this. So if you was to buy now some loose toilet paper or have the toilet paper already cut in half, then you can go ahead and use that. But to actually tear it, you know what? Listen, it is comical. Comical. Some of the things that I'm reading. But what we're talking about here in the order of the ancients, listen, you're not finding that ridiculousness there. Watch this now. We're talking about raising a person's level of consciousness. Raising a person's level of consciousness and understanding the Melchizedek order. It has to do with following and understanding Torah in its fullness. And I'm here to demonstrate that Abraham did this because he was a prototype of the Melchizedek order. Watch this. Moreover, watch this now. Every member of the order is to be interviewed at the end of each year to evaluate his spiritual attitude and the performance of his duties. So you just don't walk into the community and that's it. Every single man has to be evaluated every single year to make sure that we understand where is his or her head is at. Because people change. Oh, I was a believer in the Melchizedek order, or I was a believer in the Mashiach. Now I don't really believe in him. I don't believe in the New Testament. I feel like this and I feel like that. I believe that it is very important for us to understand our circle and making sure that those that are in our inner circle have the same agenda. And that agenda is this. The Mashiach is not sharing, again, I'm going to say, he is not sharing the stage with the Levitical priesthood, the Aaronic priesthood. There's only one king, one master teacher, Yahushua HaMashiach. It is my argument that during the first century, that the Mashiach, the master teacher, shamed all of the Pharisees, all of them, put them all to shame. Even as a little boy, he baffled all of them, the religious leaders. Where did this little boy learn letters from? Who taught him this? The master teacher, Yahushua HaMashiach, is where I proclaim all day, every day. Watch this now. This biannual and other interviews, the standing of each man in the community may be made evident that the righteous may be promoted by virtue of their increase in understanding and their integrity of their conduct, while the forward shall be demoted for their waywardness. How is that not Torah? How is that not Torah? Let's go on. That was just a precursor. The purpose of this lecture is to discuss my personal findings on who was Abram, aka Abraham. Abraham is the first of the Hebrew patriarchs and a foundational figure revered by the three major monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I've also uncovered, according to traditional biblical and Jewish chronology, he was born in the year 1948. I said, okay. We know the whole thing with 1948 with Jewish people saying that Israel became a state. So if they want to throw in the 1948 thing where Abraham was born in 1948 to try to draw a parallel with the Jewish people coming in to be in the nation in 1948, if that's what they want to do, okay. Do I believe it? No. All right. But anyway, if it is true, okay. But I'm not arguing that. But no, I personally don't believe that. He was born in the year 1948 from creation, which corresponds to roughly 2166 BCE or 1813 BCE. Abraham was born in Ur of the Chaldees, an ancient Samaria city, state located in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. This is also collaborated by the Jewish Sumerian historian Zechariah Sitchin and Samuel Noah Kramer, and many others. Abraham is probably best known for his steadfast faith in Yahuah Elohim, entering into a covenant to establish a great nation, and being the father of Isaac, the patriarchal father of the Israelite nation, and Ishmael, the patriarch of the Arab people. Abraham is reverenced by a whole lot of people. We need to understand why. Why is Abraham so important? Let's find out why. Now, to understand this presentation properly and respectfully, it is very important for us to know some choice words that I'm going to be using here. The first word is prototype, as it relates to the subject matter of the Melchizedek order. The word prototype needs to be defined. A prototype, I have it in all caps, is typically considered a specific type of model. A specific type of model. I'm arguing here this morning that this specific type of model was first Adam. In every generation, there was a prototype or a model that was pointing towards a greater model, which is Yahushua Ha'Mashiach. Now watch this now. An early, tangible, or working model built to test concepts, check functionality, and gather feedback. That was the role of Adam, because he was in the image and in the likeness of the creators. Inside of the Garden of Eden, the Gan, let's see how this man is going to operate under the divine instructions that I gave him. Because he's inside of this garden learning. And once he got to this level of consciousness, he was to now go into the world, because he's in this enclosed garden where he's learning. He then goes out of the garden being an example of his master teachers, bringing light into the world to those that lived outside of the garden. So this model was built to test concepts, to check functionality, and gather feedback. It represents the blueprint or first draft or the final product rather than the final market-ready version itself. I'm arguing that the final market-ready version was the Mashiach and not the Levitical priesthood. I'm arguing that the first model of righteousness was this Melchizedek order, a higher order than the Levitical order, because again, the Levitical order is not the perfect will of the Father. Now, were they doing sacrifices at that time? After Adam was expelled from the garden, yes. Did Abraham do animal sacrificing? Yes. But what I find interesting now is that, were we able to find Abraham doing animal sacrificing under kata'ah, which is sin? A free will offering, a thanksgiving offering, okay, then fine. But not what Israel was doing after they broke the wedding covenant vows. That's what I don't think people are understanding. What is the sentence for breaking a marriage covenant vow? After it was broken, how do you now reconcile back to the Father? And I don't think people truly understand. And sometimes you have to talk rough to Negroes, because Negroes are tough people. You can't have this passive-aggressive personality or demeanor about yourself when you're talking to idiots. And when I say idiots, I'm talking about the nation of Israel as a whole. And the Most High called Israel worse than that, idiots. Collectively as a people, Israel is a whore, prostituting backwards. Watch this now. Collectively as a people, Israel is a nasty, filthy whore. Watch this now. Operating backwards. It tells us in the book of Ezekiel, the 16th chapter, the nation of Israel behaving as a whore is contrary to the way that regular whores work. A regular whore or prostitute will sell her body in exchange for money. Israel, collectively as a people, is ass backwards. They pay their lovers to commit whoredom with you. As we used to say back in the streets, brother, you hustling backwards. How are you supposed to now get big on the food chain in the streets if you're getting high off your own supply? And that's what Israel was doing, hustling backwards. Watch this again. I'm arguing that the final market-ready version itself was the Mashiach. While a prototype is a model of the future product, it is usually an iterative step rather than the exact, the finished model that will be a mass product. I'm arguing that this mass product is the Melchizedek order. That's what the Mashiach came to do, is to reestablish the right order. And I get it. We must not read what that is. We don't want to read what that is because the book of Hebrews is taboo. the Dead Sea Scrolls that has a whole writing on the Melchizedek order, that is taboo. Understanding John the Baptist, that is taboo. We can't do that. We have to keep pushing this Levitical service enactments. We have to do that. Okay, then let's see. Let's see how this thing continues to unravel. I found it very easy to define my thesis of a prototype in Scripture. For example, Adam was a working model of the Melchizedek order as clearly described in the book of Genesis, Bereshit. And holding this divine position was a concept and idea to hold divinity on the earth as it is in Shamayim. I'm going to read the book of Matthew 6 and 9. Like I've already demonstrated earlier, just in case a person might believe Kassaj, you're not giving addresses. Matthew 6 and 9. And again, Adam holding his divine position as a concept and idea to hold divinity on earth as it is in Shamayim. Let's see, how did the Mashiach tell his disciples on how to have this divine relationship with the sovereign? The book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, verse 9. I'm just going to read down just a little bit. Let me see. Let's see. Watch. I'm be able to. Let's start at 6 and 2. All right. Just pay attention, because everybody that is on the line today through Zoom, I know, are scholars. They are scholars. Now, I'm not looking at those that are YouTube any different, because there's a lot of scholars there too. I just want to make sure that I show addresses to everything that I'm saying. The book of Psalms, the book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, verse 2. No, maybe start at verse 1. Take heed that you do not your alms before men, to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven, Shamayim. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a trumpet. Somebody was doing that. You tell me who it was. Do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do. Who were the hypocrites? In the synagogues, in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Who was doing this? Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy right hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thy alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly. And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites. Who were the hypocrites? All right. For they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corner of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, which are the hypocrites, they have their reward. But when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, meaning your sacred space, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to the Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. But when you pray, use not vain repetitions as the heathen do. Who are the heathens? Think about it. For they think that they shall be heard for much speaking. Be not ye therefore like unto them. For your Father knoweth what things you have need of before you ask him. After this manner, therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power, and all esteem belongs to the Father. And then it goes on and talks about the forgiveness and the whole 9 yards there. It is a beautiful passage. Beautiful. In the New Testament, the closest equivalent to a prototype is the Greek word prototokos, which is translated firstborn, okay, which is translated firstborn. In ancient Greek, in biblical context, this doesn't merely mean born first chronologically. It signifies preeminence, ultimate authority, and the foundation pattern for all that follows. You didn't just hear that. In the New Testament, the closest equivalent to a prototype is the Greek word prototokos, which is translated to firstborn. In ancient Greek and biblical context, this doesn't merely mean born first chronologically, as we see with Esau and Jacob, as we see now with Esau and Jacob, and we have Ishmael and Isaac. We're talking about preeminence, ultimate authority, and the foundation pattern for all that follows. The ultimate, there's a slide here I think I'm missing here. Let me see something here. Yep, I'll get to that slide. Okay. The ultimate prototype is Colossians 1:15-18. Let me just read that right quick. I want everybody to pay very close attention because I'm going through some history here, and I'm also showing some scripts. First, Colossians, the first chapter, 15-18. I'm gonna read at verse. I'm gonna start at verse 12. Okay, and I'm gonna read down to 18 real quick. Giving thanks unto the Father, which have made us meet or ready or good to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who have delivered us from the power of darkness and have translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood. I'm all day, every day Mashiach. Even the forgiveness of sins, who I believe is the Mashiach, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. I believe that the Mashiach he is the image of the invisible. So if we're talking about pre-incarnation, if we're talking about who the Mashiach is, the embodiment in the physical form of the Father in heaven, Ein Sof. When the disciples asked the Mashiach, show us the Mashiach and it sufficeth us. Have I been so long with you? And you're going to ask me to show you the Father. Watch this now. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. For I come in the word, in the name. I came representing the Father, which is Torah. If you want to see the Father, watch my works as I do, in comparison to now what the Pharisees were doing during the first century. Compare the walk. Compare it. I come in the name of my Father. By that authority, I do the things that I do. Watch this. Back to Colossians, the first chapter, verse 16. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. Whether they be thrones or dominions or principles or powers, all things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things. I believe that this is referring to the Mashiach. and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the ecclesia, the church. So we now have a problem because these are still first century writings. I'm arguing if anybody just wanted to study history, during the first century, the head of the body was the Levitical priesthood. But here we have those that have walked out of darkness and are now walking in the light. The Mashiach is sharing with us that he is the head of the body, which is the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the, watch this now, in all things, or does it say in some things? My version reads, in all things he might have the preeminence. One more verse. For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell. What are we doing with that? What are we doing with these scripts? I'm arguing it is all Mashiach or nothing. We can't play this neutral side. 1 foot into Pharisaism and 1 foot into the belief in the Mashiach. I'm arguing that we need 10 toes down on one square. Not 5 toes on one side and 5 toes on the other. We need 10 toes down on one square. And I believe through reading the scriptures, I don't think I'm doing exegetical acrobatics. I believe that the scriptures is talking about the Mashiach. The one that was promised to come in the New Testament is finally here. If there's any questions or problems with anything, the master teacher is now here. The Mashiach. Let's read on. Let's read on. This is what I wanted to share with the family. When you look at Yahusha as the begotten, it's the Greek word monogenesis, or monogenes. Until late 19th, early 20th century, assumed by many the word only begotten, it was the word genah, G-E-N-N-A-W, which means to beget, Yeshua as to beget or only begotten. But later discoveries in the papyri monos only means gene, not genah, which means kind. The Mashiach was the divine in his kind. He was unlike the others. Not only begotten, because only begotten refers to that there were more sons or more children. He was the only begotten of his kind. Rebecca had 2 children, according to the canonized writings that we have. I don't know what oral tradition teach how many children that she had, but we know of Isaac, and we know of Jacob and Esau. So with Jacob and Esau, monos, meaning now that Jacob was more renowned of this kind. Ishmael was more renowned of this kind. Now watch this now. Let's take a look at Hebrews 11:17. I'm going to prove this definition in the book of Hebrews. I'm going to prove it. Watch this. I'm going to show it to you. When you go to the book of Hebrews, just pull it up right quick. Hebrews, the 11th chapter, verse 17. Just give me a minute here because I want to show the family how I'm coming to this conclusion here. The book of Hebrews 11:17. I got it. Okay. Okay, why it's not pulling up? Here we go. 11:17. It reads, by faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promise offered up his only begotten. So what's in question now is only begotten. When you look at that Strong's number 3439, we have the word monogenesis or mon enis. Okay, that's the way that they have it. When you look at the Greek word study, transliteration, pronunciation, etymology, and grammar of the word, it means single of its kind only. Used of Christ denotes the only begotten Son of God. Only thing that I'm sharing here is that word monos, there's a more authentic definition in support of our argument. And if you read the book of Hebrews 11:17, because at some point, along with the Hebrew, we might have to also dive into the Greek to help us to get a better understanding of what's going on. All right. Let's move on. Let's look at the next one. Abraham, the prototype of Melchizedek. Understanding the Bible from culture, language, and what the climate was like amongst the surrounding cities. Very important. Please, Mr. Kai, there's a lot of information I'm going to be sharing here. Please pay very close attention. Understanding Abraham being the prototype of Melchizedek, we must understand the Bible from one, culture, language, and what the climate was like amongst the surrounding cities is going to be crucial in understanding the Bible. With that being said, a manufacturing prototype is built before the final product. Again, a manufacturing prototype is built before the final product, which I believe the final product was a Mashiach. The biblical timeline is spiritually inverted. The divine blueprint, Ha'Mashiach YAHUSHA, who I believe this to be now, as an ultimate prototype, existed in the mind of God from the beginning. This first earthly model was Adam, who was created in the image and in the likeness of God. Now watch this. You have the word image, Selim, and the word likeness, demut. So in order to now be part of this divine council, it is very important that we demonstrate or it be part of our consciousness that we're in the likeness and in the image of the creative fathers, the Elohim. Now, once Adam achieved that level of consciousness, then he was placed in the garden. Read Genesis, the first chapter again. There were certain qualities that Adam needed to have before being placed in the garden. And when Adam was evaluated, like I talked about earlier, when he was evaluated, Adam, where are you? The sovereign wasn't asking Adam, where are you, because he couldn't find him. We have to understand Hebraic epithets, Hebraic thought, Hebraic idea. When Elohim asked Abraham, where is he? He's asking Abraham, when he's asking Adam, where is he? He's asking Adam
where is he spiritually? Where are you? You've never had an intimate conversation with your Isha, and you begin to hear things that you didn't lay down in your house. And you ask her, where are you? Are you and I still on the same page? Now watch this now. Adam responded by saying, I was naked, so I hid myself from you. The response was, who told you you were naked? Did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? Now watch this now. Let's bring this back now into our everyday life. This is just an example. You come home, you ask for your Isha. Babe, where you at? I'm upstairs. Why are you not upstairs? You usually greet me with a hug and a smile as soon as I come into the house. Why has your behavior changed? Well, I was watching this YouTube video, and such and such and such and such said this and they said that. Were you listening to a doctrine outside of the rules and regulations that I have set in this house? So do you see the parallels in this here? I'm arguing that the Father set up rules and regulations on how to operate inside of the garden. And when you can't follow those rules and regulations because he was evaluated, he was expelled from the garden. I'm arguing that the instructions that the Father gave to the Mashiach during the first century, they must be followed. Must be followed. Let's read on. We almost done. Almost done. Now, this is Mori Eliyahu and Mori Abad Yahu. This is where they have the mastery on this here. Covenant meals, because it was brought to my understanding that, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at nobody, okay? I don't, that's not what I'm doing here. Some folks don't believe that that incident that happened between Melchizedek and Abraham was not a covenant meal. They believe, maybe for some odd reason, that Melchizedek went to Kroger, he went to Publix, Food Town, ShopRite, Pathmark, and got a loaf of bread and just divided that, or it had a covenant meal with it. No. It was not that kind of bread. Watch this. In ancient Eastern cultures, covenants were rarely just written contracts. They were relational bonds ratified, sealed, and celebrated through a shared ritual meal. I said earlier, we have to understand Hebraic culture and also what was the culture during the Mosaic time, during the time of Abraham. What was the culture like then? Not now, 2026. We need to understand how contracts and relational bonds were ratified and sealed. It has come to my understanding that a lot of folks don't know that because they don't believe that there was a covenant made between Melchizedek and Abraham. Watch this. The encounter between Abraham and Melchizedek demonstrates this covenant pattern in several distinct ways. The Eastern practice, I forgot to bring my book where I'm getting this information from. I'll get the book. I'm going to get it and I'll share the screen with you. But for now, okay, the Eastern practice of covenant meals in the ancient Near East, sharing food, specifically bread and wine, was the universal gesture of establishing peace, solidarity, and mutual alliance. By bringing out these specific elements, Melchizedek was not merely offering refreshments to a weary warrior, he was initiating a formal ritual. I'm not making this stuff up. You can even Google, and it would give you the name of the books and academia reports sharing the same information. And this is what I know for a fact. When I began to hear over 10 years ago, at the congregation of Yashra'al, when I began to hear Moreh Eliyahu break this down just like this. And I'm like, that's interesting. Let me begin to read and find out more about this. And Moreh Eliyahu, Moreh Abad Yahu, and even Moreh Mikael from California, they have been teaching these covenant meals for a very long time now. I'm not making this up. But we don't understand culture because you know what? We have to stay inside of the canonized writings that was truly enforced April the 8th, 1546. I don't want to go outside of that. I'm looking for a book where it has everything in it, and I feel comfortable like that. I don't really want to do no research. I don't want to burn the midnight oil. I don't want to burn the candle at both ends. I want something nicely packaged and given to me. I don't want to really study. That's where a lot of people's head is at today. But watch this now. The contrast. This is highlighted by the contrast with the king of Sodom in Genesis the 14th chapter, who brings nothing and demands possessions. Ratifications. In Hebrew culture, this act is known as cutting a covenant. If Moreh Abad Yahu, if Moreh Eliyahu is listening, if you want to elaborate on anything, because this is your baby. This is where you standing 10 toes down as you are now on a regular on Clubhouse teaching this right here. At any time, come on in, or anybody else. Agree or disagree. Come on in. Because I'm not making it up. I'm reading maybe some things that you haven't read. And I'm trying to give the sources where I'm getting the information from. The ratification. Again, in Hebrew culture, this is known as cutting a covenant. Examples. You want an example? Here's an example. Example elsewhere in Genesis include Isaac making a feast to seal an oath with Abimelech. This is in Genesis the 26th chapter, verse 30. And Jacob sharing a meal to finalize a pact with Laban in Genesis 31:54. Read it for yourself. Let's read on. Read on. Covenant meals continue. The initiation into the Melchizedek order. From a theological standpoint, this meal functions as a formal invitation and transference of authority. I'm going to read it again. Covenant meals continuing. Abraham, the prototype of the Melchizedek order. From a theological standpoint, this meal functions as a formal initiation and transference of authority. The tithe and the blessings. By consuming the bread, this is holy bread. This is divine bread. The same bread that the Mashiach had with his Talmudim before he ate. This wasn't regular bread. The bread being blessed, this now makes the bread blessed, holy Kodesh bread. The wine, the same thing. This is a ritual ceremony introducing the Talmudim into a higher order. This is the reason why, during the first century, the religious leaders had an issue with the Talmudims of the Mashiach. They were operating under a different authority in the name of Yahushua Mashiach, Yahushua. But you get the point. And if anybody recognizes or respects the Mashiach of the first century, you were to be kicked out of the synagogues. And just for an appetizer, even amongst the scribes, no, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, not even the Sadducees agreed with the oral tradition the way that the Pharisees were spelling it out during the first century. The Sadducees was in disagreement with that. And there's a whole bunch of information on that where they said that was a bunch of bull crap. So again, everybody at the end of the day is going to have to pick their poison. And that's what it is. I'm not here to make mockery, make fun. That's not what I do. I just want to make sure that anything that I'm reading can be substantiated through the master teacher. Show me what the master teacher is saying first and see whether or not everything else falls in line as we compare it to the master teacher. One example, and it is not, what I'm about to share is not in the Aramaic writings, but it is in the Masoretic text. There was a woman that was found in the act of adultery. That's not in the Aramaic, but it is in the Masoretic text. It's not in the Aramaic again. The religious leaders bring the woman to the Mashiach. And if they found the woman in the very act, I mean, there was in the very act that they should have been able to catch the man, but I guess the man outran the religious leaders and he got away. I guess that's what happened then. I don't know. But anyway, they bring the woman to the Mashiach, and we're talking about what the Mashiach actually wrote on the ground. Okay, we'll talk about that at another time. But the Mashiach, he begins to write in the ground. All right, and they were looking to stone the woman. And that was the protocol on what was to happen during the time of Moses. Now, watch this now. The Mashiach did something that the religious leaders were not ready to do. He, without sin, cast the first stone. The Mashiach had the authority to give the woman a pardon, but told her not to continue in that sin anymore. When the Mashiach stands up, where are your accusers? Listen, anybody that understands scripts, who were the accusers? And they all left one by one. But the greater master teacher was still there. He without sin. I'm arguing that the Mashiach was blameless. Again, the master teacher. Please pay very attention to the order that the Mashiach came in, a much higher order. Okay, watch this now. We have, from a theological standpoint, this meal functioned as a formal initiation and transference of authority, the tithe and the blessings, by consuming the bread and wine and immediately paying a tenth of everything, a tithe to Melchizedek, Abraham legally and spiritually submits to the Melchizedek's priesthood. The priesthood transfer. This sets the stage for what the theologians refer to as the order of Melchizedek. Again, the priesthood transfer. This sets the stage for what theologians refer to as the order of Melchizedek. By partaking in the priest king's sacred meal, Abraham is brought into alignment with the heavenly pre-Levitical order of worship. Wow. Wow. Okay. The blueprint of the new covenant. Christian theology views this exact moment as the primary Old Testament blueprint for the Holy Communion. When Yahushua institutes the new covenant at the Last Supper, he does not use bloody animal sacrifices of the Levitical law. He does not. Again, when Yahushua institutes the new covenant as the Last Supper, he does not use the bloody animal sacrifices for the Levitical law. Instead, he intentionally uses bread and wine, declaring it to be the blood of the covenant. And that's in Matthew 26:28. By doing so, Yahushua, whom the book of Hebrew calls a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, reenacts the exact covenant meal that Melchizedek shared with Abraham thousands of years before. I'm not making this up. I'm not making it up. Let's read on. This theological framework accurately connects the unique functions of the Melchizedek priesthood with direct access to the divine presence. The divine presence? I'm just going to touch on this just a little bit. Do we really know what it means to be in the divine presence? When the high priest in the 7th month, the 10th day, what hovered between the two angels on the mercy seat was a cloud. Not the very essence of the thing, but a cloud. But to be in the divine direct presence, I find something interesting. It made mention that Moses became an illuminated being when he was in the divine presence. And when he came off of the mount, watch this now, when he came off the mount, it is documented in our writings that the religious leaders could not behold that type of glory. They couldn't. That type of glory, I can argue all day, was a higher order because Moses just left the divine presence of the sovereign. What had to happen, they needed to put a veil over the face of Moses. Now, if there's a veil over the face of Moses, then that means that you're not seeing the full presence. Put a veil over anything and you're not seeing the full essence. In order to see the full divine direct presence, you need to reveal the veil. And that veil was removed at the death of the Mashiach. When the veil was rent, We don't see the parallels in all of this here. Am I the only one? Come on now. When a man marries his Isha, traditionally in the Christian church, she walks down the aisle with a veil over her face. As the preacher is administering the wedding ceremony, the groom then takes the veil from the woman's face, he lifts it up, and he kisses the woman and says, I do. That's how it usually is done. Mishpachah, please listen. There is the permissive will of the Father and the perfect will of the Father. The perfect will of the Father removes the veil. Israel was operating under a veil until the coming of the Mashiach. The veil was rent. So now we have access to this divine presence under the Melchizedek order, not the Levitical order. Okay. The problem with the earthly order. Under the Mosaic law, the Levitical priest could not dwell in the direct presence of God. The veil. God's presence was restricted behind a thick curtain in the Holy of Holies. The access. Only the high priest could enter only once a year, on the Day of Atonement, and only with the blood of animal sacrifices. We don't have to do that now. We don't have to do that. The limitations. The book of Hebrews explicitly states that this earthly law made nothing perfect and could not truly cleanse the consciousness of the worshiper. That's what it says. That's what it says. Abraham, the prototype of the Melchizedek order. The Melchizedek order was the divine standard. The book of Hebrews argues that the Mashiach belongs to a completely different higher order, the order of Melchizedek, which possesses the divine credentials necessary to enter and remain. To enter and remain in God's presence. An indestructible life. Hebrews 7:16 notes that the Mashiach, Yahushua Mashiach, became a priest, not by a physical descent, but by power of an indestructible life. He is an eternal priest who does not die or need to be replaced. And we're going to talk about that. The Melchizedek priest of old, they died, but the order still remained. The priest might have died, but the order still remained. We're going to demonstrate, as Mikael from California and I was talking about. When you look at the word Melchizedek, king, priest, my king is priest, guess what? That is both a name and a title. Melchizedek is both a name and a title. The Melchizedek priest of that generation can be called Melchizedek, referring to the person, the same way now you can identify Donald Trump by name. His title is president. But if you say president, he can also be recognized by the title also. It's dual in function. And I'm going to demonstrate that. The Melchizedek order, as a divine standard, the book of Hebrews argues that Yahushua HaMashiach belongs to a completely different, higher order, the order of Melchizedek, which possesses the divine credentials necessary to enter and remain in God's presence, an indestructible life. Hebrews 7:16 notes that the Mashiach became a priest not by physical descent, but by the power of an indestructible life. He is an eternal priest who does not die or need to be replaced, tearing the veil. Because the Mashiach possessed this divine status, his sacrifice permanently tore the veil, is my argument. His sacrifice, which is his body, and we're redeemed by the blood of the Mashiach, his sacrifice permanently tore the veil, separating God from humanity. But now this is the bold access here now that I found interesting. The ultimate goal of this order is demonstrated in Hebrews 4:16, which invites followers to approach God's throne of grace with confidence. Under the Melchizedek order, being brought into this divine status means believers are no longer kept at a distance by rituals. I don't want to hear no rituals. That's just me personally. I'm speaking for me personally. I am not here to promote rituals, but I believe that we are granted direct, permanent access to the presence of God by the blood of Yahushua Ha'Mashiach. So when he began to say, of no mother, to which of the angels have he said at any time, sit thou at my right hand, and so I make thy enemies thy footstool? To which of the angels did the Father ever say that? He didn't say that to any. I'm here to argue that this Melchizedek order has no earthly precedence. Meaning now is that its beginnings started from Shamayim, from heaven. And I pray that I demonstrated that when we have, let us make man in our image. I'm arguing that in our image is referring to a divine heavenly council. And this particular individual was in the image of the divine council in heaven. So this divine councilman was going to be on this earth, demonstrating now a higher level of consciousness, which is the Melchizedek order and not the Levitical order. Let's read on. Let's read on. I want to thank everybody for taking time and hanging in here with me. I really do. Archaeological discoveries in ancient Mesopotamia. I'm going to go through some dates here, some hardcore dates. If you don't believe me, where I'm getting all of this information from, look it up. Maybe I was up while you were sleeping. The reason why I could come up with this particular type of information. And this is not to throw shade on anybody. I have learned from so many people. Mishpat I have learned from, Mori Eliyahu, Abad Yahu. I've learned from Mikael from California. I've learned from Lamad Yahu, Samak, Shael. I've learned from so many people. And what I do now is that I take their information and I ask for where they're getting information from, and I read it and let the proof fall where it may. If I have to change my position, no problem. Archaeological discoveries in ancient Mesopotamia and the surrounding Levant provide extensive evidence that covenants and political treaties were legally ratified and celebrated through ritual feasting. In the ancient Near East, an agreement was rarely complete without an oath. And again, Mori Eliyahu and Mori Abad Yahu are experts in talking about the importance of an oath, ratification, and sacrifices. They're masters at this. An agreement was rarely completed without an oath, a sacrifice, and a concluding celebratory meal to seal the bond of peace. The most compelling archaeological and textual evidence for this practice includes the Mari tablets. Look it up. The Mari tablets in the 18th century, discovered in modern day Syria, the Mari Royal Palace archives yielding over 20,000, not 2,000, not 200. Prove me wrong. And no, I did not read 20,000 cuneiform tablets. But in case someone don't, there's always a non-believer. Always a non-believer. If I showed 19,000, to some folks, that wouldn't be good enough. Show me 19,001. Okay, you showed me 19,001. Can you show me 19,002 and then I'll really believe you? The same thing that happened with Rabbi Eleazar. When Rabbi Eleazar was trying to show and demonstrate, and I don't believe this, but again, he was trying to show and demonstrate the difference between a clean oven and an unclean oven. And I'll talk about that later. When he called from heaven and trees and in the water, and then a voice came from heaven. Why don't you believe Eleazar by all of these signs and miracles? And then those who were opposing Rabbi Eleazar, when his voice came from heaven saying, you should believe Rabbi Eleazar, the opposing team against Rabbi Eleazar said, hey, listen, we don't eat, this is Mishnah teaching that we don't even adhere to the voice of heaven. We the rabbis, we're the big dogs down here in heaven. See, here down on earth, we're the big dogs. Whoa. And I have more to even elaborate on that. But again, I have heard exegetical acrobatics to even try to justify that. But watch this now. Discovered in the modern day Syria, the Mari royal palace archives yielded over 20,000 cuneiform tablets documenting the diplomatic practices of Upper Mesopotamia, where Abraham came from. Modern day Iraq. Watch this now. The ritual. The tablets explicitly describe alliances between Amorite and Mesopotamia kings, being sealed by a ritual feast and by the slaughtering of an animal. Oftentimes they have an ass or a donkey. The language. The text uses the West Semitic terminology for making peace and establishing fellowship through shared tables. Shared tables are meals. Eating bread and drinking wine together was a legal binding component of ancient international diplomacy. I'm not making it up. I got more. My Isha's like, wow, how many more presentations, examples that you need to show? I said, babe, I'm dealing with a rough crowd sometimes. Cylinder seals and mirror representations, all right? Again, more proof. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous Old Babylonian cylinder seals dating from the 18th century BC and stone stele that physically depict covenant making, the imagery. These artifacts frequently displayed mirrored representations, symmetrically depictions of two leaders of a king and a god sitting across from one another around a central axis. The context. Many of these scenes explicitly portray drinking councils and shared banquets. This doesn't sound familiar with Melchizedek and Abraham. This doesn't sound familiar with these practices that they were doing in the near so-called Middle East with the Mashiach and with his Talmudim. And this was not just regular old bread. This was holy, blessed bread. You know what's interesting is that, come to find out, and I just came to this understanding a little while ago, is that when a priest, usually, depending on the ceremony, when he takes his hands to bless, did you know that he is actually anointing? Did you know that he's actually now initiating or bringing the individual that he's praying over into into an organization, a school, a place where higher education in Torah is being taught at, called a yeshiva. Again, we have to make sure we understand customs. The context, many of these scenes explicitly portray drinking councils and shared banquets, showing that the physical act of drinking from shared vessels, okay? If I have a chalice and I drink from it and I give it to another brother to drink from it, we just came into an alliance. An alliance. And again, Mori Eliyahu and Mori Abadyahu had did so many classes on the wine cup ceremonies. When you have the man and the wife, you have the parents now there, and they're drinking from the same cup. Because what is happening is that when you marry that woman, you're now marrying into the family, is what you're doing. You're marrying into the family. The Melchizedek order, when it is properly done, you're marrying into the family. The family who? The family of the divine council, the other angels. You're now part of this divinity. Come on, people. Come on. That is not done through Levitical practices. It's not. If I drink and a sister drinks from the same cup in a ritual ceremony, if I drink and another brother drink, because from the same cup, you're now in communion together. It also demonstrates trust, because during those times too, also now, you had to be careful because, of poisoning. But if I drink and you see nothing happen to me, and then you drink, that means that you have confidence that what I drink, there's nothing poison in it. It's all legit. And we'll talk about that later. And plus, Moreh Eliyahu and Moreh Abadia, who talked about that very extensively. So hold on. I guess somebody is sending a bunch of messages. I'll have to check that later. Okay. All right. Hallelujah. The Neo-Assyrian is called the Takultu ritual. In later Mesopotamia, history, textual, and archaeological records detail the Takultu ritual. The definition, the word Takultu, literally translates to banquet or eating. The practice, this was highly performed, ritualized state meal led by the Assyrian king. The king, his administrative officials, and representatives from vassal states gathered to eat and drink alongside the symbolic presence of the gods. This meal functioned to legally bind the human participants in a covenant of absolute loyalty to the crown and state deities. I'm asking, are we really willing to drink from this cup? Remember when the Mashiach said, can you truly drink from this cup that I'm about to drink? Where it's going to be needed for you to give your sole attendance to the Mashiach? Can you really drink from that cup? Ask yourself that. Can you drink from the Melchizedek cup? That wine ceremony. Can you drink from that cup? I'm arguing that the permissive will of the Father, that Levitical cup, where you're using animal sacrifices, where that animal sacrifice was supposed to now represent you dying. Now, can you now truly recognize the true covenant and drinking from the cup that the Mashiach drank from, where you're now being held responsible? Are you man enough to do that? Are you woman enough to do that? That's the question. Let's read on. Abraham, the prototype of the Melchizedek. This is the covenant framework comparison. Archaeological sources that I was able to not put together, but I was able to post here. Legal ritual elements found in the Mari or the Mari archives: sacrificial, slaughter, diplomatic, food allocations, cultural meaning, converts and adversarial relationships into a family peace pact. Babylonian cylinder seals, shared drinking cups, symmetrically banqueting. In cultural meaning, it serves as the public visual verification of an alliance. The Assyrian Takutu text state sponsors feasting divine invocation. Cultural meaning reestablishes structural hierarchy and political loyalty. This deep Mesopotamian cultural background explains why the author of Genesis, watch this now, this deep Mesopotamian cultural background explains why the author of Genesis is framing the meeting between Abraham and Melchizedek around bread and wine, which I had highlighted, would have immediately signaled a formal legal covenant creation to the ancient reader. Okay. In Middle Eastern history and ancient Near Eastern treaties, the title of friend. Abraham was called a friend, Khalil in Arabic, or Oheb in Hebrew. Abraham was called a friend. The Talmudim of the Mashiachs were called friends. You are called a friend because of what happened in the relationship that the Mashiach had with his disciples. I no longer call you servants, but friends. All the things that the Father had shared with me, I have shared with you. You guys are of a higher caliber than the Pharisees. You're not on the same pay grade. I'm the master teacher. I'm the head of the body. Come on now. In Middle Eastern history and ancient Near Eastern treaties, the title of friend, Khalil in Arabic or Oheb in Hebrew, was not a casual term of endearment, but a formal, legal, political, and spiritual status indicating the highest level of proximity to a king or deity. Come on now. The concept of a covenant friend carries massive theological weight when applied to Abraham. The ancient legal status of king's friend. I believe this is one of the apocryphal books. It might be the Wisdom of Solomon, the Wisdom of Solomon, or the Book of Ecclesiasticus. It talks about remember a friend. Not everyone is a friend. A friend will be with you through thick and thin. A true friend, not this bull crap that we see here in 2026. A friend? Do you really know what a friend is? Like we used to say back in the day, listen, when we used to move stuff on the streets and stuff like that, in order to be successful, man, you need a ride or die chick. Someone that was able to move with you, put in that work for you. Because back then, women were not looked as workers for the man that was actually moving the actual weight from state to state, who was actually moving that stuff on Amtrak, who was actually moving and making money off of Greyhound and using a bus called Trailways, who was really putting in that work. Come on, man, bro. Listen, that was wrong. But if you wanted that Bentley, if you wanted that Mercedes Benz with the deep hammer rims and the 4 speakers across the back with that Alpine system pumping through that trunk, listen, you needed to put in some work and you needed a friend. But what if now we was to take that same attitude that we had back in the streets? What if we took that attitude and applied it to scripture? I need to be surrounded with brothers that say, hey, listen, Kassad, I got your back. I got your back, brother. Listen, boo-boo has now hit the fan. This is the type of circle that I need around me. Boo-boo has hit the fan. We're now living collectively as a body in the community, where we now begin to hand out those heaters, those body lifters, those type of instruments that have your mama picking out that black dress because boo-boo has hit the fan. I need somebody to watch the front door. I need somebody to watch the windows. I need somebody to watch the back door because we're not going out without a fight. That's the type of allegiance that we need to have with this now messianic walk, because I'm here to share that the times are coming where we're going to have to be more collective in our thinking. We did it for the streets. We did it for the streets. If I, your brother Kassad, can do it for the streets, I should have 10 toes down ready to do it for the Mashiach and my brothers who believe solely in the Mashiach. I'm going to let you know, I am not holding 10 toes down for non-messianic believers. I can't do it because you're going to turn me over as soon as the feds come. Yeah, Kassad lives such and such, whatever like that. And he has this, he has that, blah, 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 and everything like that. And here's a master entrance into his house. The same way that it was done during the siege in Jerusalem. It got to the point where people began to get hungry. There were Israelites who snuck out of the city and showed the Romans secret entry into Jerusalem would help now to destroy Jerusalem prior to 70 AD, or during the whole 70 AD era. Let's read on, man. I have so much information to share, but let's get through this here. Let's finish this up. The ancient legal status of the king's friend. In ancient Near Eastern courts, such as Egypt, Babylon, and early Israel, okay, special emphasis in Israel, the friend of the king was an official administrative title. A title. A title. You don't just throw the word friend around free willy. No. I need to earn your respect as a friend. This person was not a mere servant or subject. They were the king's closest confidant. Or confinant. The one who held the right of immediate, unhindered access to the royal chambers without protocol or appointments. Remember when Hadassah, because the king, I think the king of the Assyrians, because Hadassah had married an Assyrian king. I forgot the king's name. Was it Xerxes? What happened was no one can actually enter into the king's presence without the king's permission. And so I remember when Hadassah took the liberty of going to meet her husband without being announced, not following the protocol. And she did this now for the nation of Israel because of Haman, what he was about to do, and he wanted to kill all the Israelites. I find that very interesting, to be called a friend, and a friend has access, as the Mashiach calls his Talmudim friends. The destruction of the Levitical system with the tearing of the veil, giving those that want to come into true covenant relationship with the Father, you are called friends, and you have now this access to the royal chambers without protocol or appointments. Watch this, Mishpachah. The appointment was the 7th month, the 10th day. I don't need no 7th month, 10th day in the bull. And plus now, I need to bring an animal and slit his neck and then take blood and pour blood over some earthly altar. That was accomplished in the Mashiach. I don't need a 7th month, 10th day appointment. I don't. By elevating Abraham to a friend, Isaiah 41:8. I'm not going to read it. You read it for yourself. And James 2:23 are declaring that Abraham possessed sovereign access to the divine council chambers of heaven. Prove me wrong. The hallmark of friend status, shared secrets. As the Mashiach later notes that pulling his disciples into the same covenant standard in John 15:15, read it for yourself. A servant does not know what his master is doing, but I call you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Come on, man. That was done under the Melchizedek order. That was done under a more divine priesthood, Yahushua HaMashiach. This exact dynamic plays out in Genesis 18 when God physically visits Abraham's tent. Pay close attention to that meeting there. Before executing judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, God explicitly pauses and asks, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? No, because Abraham is a friend. Remember, the other messengers left. The only time the other messengers spoke to Abraham is in the salutation, was in the greetings. After that, they had no other conversation with Abraham. The only one that had a conversation with Abraham was the pre-incarnated Yahushua HaMashiach. That was the only one. The other ones went and warned warned Lot about what's to happen to now Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham is now in the divine presence, the embodiment of the Father in the flesh. And yes, I do understand the teachings of the Rambam in regards to this whole situation here. And I do agree with Rambam, Maimonides to a degree, about theophany and what was actually going on inside of Abraham's head. And were these actual beings, or was this a physical act that was happening, or was this something spiritually that was happening inside of Abraham's head? And I do agree, once again, with the Rambam, with his understanding of this creative thought. But I don't agree with everything that the Rambam, Maimonides, had to say about it, because Maimonides had a different approach, and I also agree with him, where he said that no, that these were actual events. So just to even be fair, I do read from about the Rambam. I do. And I agree when it aligns with scripture. But if it does not, I'm going to throw shade on it every day, all day. And at the end of the day, it's all about the Mashiach. And there's much more I have to say on that, but I'm going to leave it alone. But I just wanted to demonstrate that your brother Kassad, I haven't been in this walk for 35 years for nothing. Give me credit for something, if not nothing. Give me credit for just a little bit. Watch this. The exact dynamic plays out in Genesis 18th chapter when God physically visits Abraham's tent. Before executing judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, God explicitly pauses and asks, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Genesis 18:17. God treats Abraham as an equal partner in governance, allowing Abraham to boldly bargain and intercede with him over the fate of the cities. We don't see what type of relationship that Abraham is having with this divine counsel. Abraham is no joke. In case you forgot, Abraham is no joke. If anything, study the teachings of Abraham. The convergence of the priest and the friend. This ties the points together perfectly. To be brought into the Melchizedek order is to be brought into the status of a covenant friend. You didn't hear me. This ties the points together perfectly. To be brought into the Melchizedek order is to be brought into the status I have in bold letters, a covenant friend. A priest of the earthly Levitical order was a servant who stood outside the veil, performing rituals under strict boundaries. Nobody noticed that? A priest of the earthly Levitical order was a servant who stood outside the veil, performing rituals under strict boundaries. A priest of the Melchizedek order operates under the status of a friend or son who sits at the king's table, partakes in the covenant meal of bread and wine, and dwells permanently in the divine presence. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Let's read on. This is where the rubber hits the fan. All right. See, the rubber hits the road. Watch this now. The book of the secrets of Enoch. All right. At any time, Morey Mikael from California, if you want to join in, because we brought this to my attention, and you said it's of a necessity that I read it. Methuselah called to the people, lo, Ner will be before your face from day to day as a prince and a leader. This royal priesthood, as I stated earlier, there was always a priesthood, a royal priesthood. This is from the book of the secrets of Enoch. You scroll down to page 141 on the scroll, but 88 in the book of the secrets of Enoch. And I know people have issues with the book of Enoch. They have issues with the Nag Hammadi scrolls. They have the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, the book of Hebrews. They have all kinds of issues. And again, whatever a person's issues are, those are your issues. I can't argue your issues. I mean, okay, fine. Those are your issues. I can't argue that. But Ner would be before your face from day to day as a prince and a leader. This is Ner. The people said it to Methuselah, let it be unto us according to thy word, and let the voice of the Lord be as he spoke to thee. And when Methuselah had spoken to the people before the altar, his spirit was confused, and he bent his knee and stretched out his hands to the heavens and prayed to God. And as he prayed, his spirit went before the sovereign, and Ner and all the people made haste and made a grave for Methuselah in the place of Aruzan. I would just ask a person now, You can start like at page like 85. It's a good Sunday read. Tell your Isha, listen, you know what? I'm going to need about an hour or two to do some reading. Keep the children down or go to the library or whatever that you need to do. Start at about page 85, 84, 85, and read up on who was Methuselah. And it's going to demonstrate to you that there was always a priesthood. The love of the Father for the people is that even though Adam was expelled from the garden, I'm going to still give you access on how to get back into divine counsel. But these cherubims now are placed outside of the Garden of Eden, so you can't come back in the way that you left out. You left out in disobedience. The only way that you could enter back in is through a righteous consciousness, where you are going to now hold yourself accountable for the things that you're doing and not a pigeon. Can you imagine that? I'm going to hold my sins that I did, for example, when I commit some type of infraction against Moreh Abad Yahuwah, and what I'm going to do is throw up a pigeon or a bull and everything is okay. Where's the accountability in all of that? That was only for a season and for a time. That is now over with. I need to know whether or not you truly are sorry, Kassad, for taking my TV off the wall when I trusted you in my house while I went on vacation. You took my TV off the wall. And then I go to your house, I see my TV, no, you see your TV on my wall. And I'm trying to argue with you that the TV that's on my wall is not your TV. Come on now. You got to stop it. Let's stop it. Stop it. And when Methuselah had spoken to the people before the altar, his spirit was confused. Oh, I read that. And Ner and all the people made haste, verse 17, and made a grave for Methuselah in the place of Arzon. And Ner came in glorious attire, and all his priestly robes and lights with much pomp. And the people lifted up the body of Methuselah, and having glorified it, laid it in the grave which they made for him, and buried him, and said, Blessed was Methuselah before the face of the Lord. The face of the Lord is a Hebrew acronym for the presence of the Lord. And before the face of all the people, when they were about to depart to their own household, Ner said to the people, Go quickly now, and bring sheep and heifers, and turtle doves and pigeons, and let us offer them before the face of the sovereign, and then go to our houses. And the people listened to Ner the priest, and hastened and brought the victims, and bound them to the head of the altar. And Ner took the sacrificial knife, and slew all the victims, which are the animals, that were brought, and offered them before the face of the sovereign. And all the people rejoiced before the face of the sovereign, and glorified on that day of the Lord, on that day, the Lord of Ner, the ruler of heaven and earth. And again, I have no issues with it's called an olah and a meal offering. I think it's called a miknah. So a grain offering. So I don't have any issues with that here. And this is what we're sharing here. So 21. And Ner took the sacrificial knife and slew all of the victims that were brought, and offered them before the face of the Lord. And all the people rejoiced before the face of the Lord, and glorified on that day the Lord of Ner, the ruler of heaven and earth. From that day there was peace and order over the whole earth in the days of Ner during 202 years. And then the people turned from God. Look how this is working with Genesis. Watch how this is working. From that day, verse 23, and from the people turned from God and began to be jealous one to another, and people rebelled against people, and tongues rose against tongue. in rivalry. And if lips were the same, hearts would chose different things. Excuse me. And if lips were the same, hearts chose different things. Right. And the devil began to reign for the third time outside of paradise. And this is what Mikael and we were talking about. And when the devil began to reign the third time, the first time before paradise, the second time in paradise, the third time outside of paradise, he continued doing so till the deluge. And there arose a great dispute and confusion. And Ner, the priest, heard it and was grieved and said in his heart, in truth, I have understood that the time has drawn near, and the end which the Lord spoke to Methuselah, the father of my father Lamech. Watch this now. And the wife of Ner, named Sopinama, being barren, brought forth no child to Ner. And Sopinama was in the time of her old age, and in the day of her death, she conceived in her womb. And Ner the priest did not sleep with her, nor knew her from the day that the Lord appointed him to serve as priest now before the people. When Sopinama knew of her conception, she was ashamed and felt humbled and concealed herself all the days till she brought forth, and no one of the people knew. And when 282 days were accomplished, and the day of the birth began to draw near, Ner remembered about his wife and called her to himself in his house that he might talk to her. And Sopinama came to Ner, her husband, being with child, and the appointed day of the birth was drawing near. And Ner saw her and was very much ashamed and said unto her, what hast thou done, wife? And hast shamed me before the face of the people. Now depart from me and go where thou didst commence the shame of thy womb, unless I lay hands on you. No, he didn't say that. Okay, so that I defile not my hand upon thee and sin before the face of the Lord. And so Panama spoke unto Ner, her husband, saying, okay, let's get serious here. And Ner, her husband, saying, my Lord, lo, the time of my old age and the day of my death has come. And there was no youth in me, and I did not know when the period of my years is past, and the unfruitfulness of my womb began. And Ner did not believe his wife. And he said unto her a second time, listen, woman, depart from me, unless I do thee an injury and sin before the face of the Lord. And it came to pass, when Ner had spoken to his wife, Sopinama fell at the feet of Ner and died. And Ner was very much grieved and said in his heart, was this from my voice, since a man by his voice and thought sins before the face of the Lord? Let me read it to you again. Was this from my voice, since a man by his voice and thought sins before the face of the Lord? Digest that, okay? And now the Lord is merciful to me. I know in truth in my heart that my hand was not upon her. And so I say, glory to thee, O Lord, since no one on earth knows this deed which the Lord has wrought. And Ner hastened and shut the doors of the house and went to Noah. Okay, Noah, 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 and went to Noah, his brother, and told him all that had happened concerning his wife. And Noah hastened and came with Noah, his brother, into the house of Ner on account of the death of Sopinama. And they talked to themselves and saw how her womb was at the time of the birth. And Noah said to Ner, let it not be subject of sorrow to thee, Ner, my brother, that the Lord has today concealed our shame, because no one of the people know this. Now let us go quickly and bring her secretly and may the Lord hide the ignominy of our shame. And they laid Sapanama on the bed, and they wrapped her, watch this now, they wrapped her in black robes and shut her in the house ready for burial, and dug a grave in secret. And then came out an infant from the dead Sapanama, and this baby sat on the bed at her right hand. And Noah and Ner entered and saw the infant sitting at the dead Sapanama. It gets even more interesting, believe it or not. I'm just going to share it with you. And wiping his clothes, and Noah and Ner were tempted with great fear, for the child, this dead woman, gave birth to this child, for the child was complete in his body, like one of 3 years old, and spoke with his lips and blessed the Lord. And Noah and Ner gazed upon it, and lo, the seal of the priesthood was on its breast, and it was glorious in countenance. And Noah, watch this now, and Noah and Ner said, see, the Lord renews the consecration according to our blood. I can also demonstrate as More Eliyahu and More Abad Yahu had even shared the priesthood as it pertains to Noah. But let me read on. And Noah and Ner said, see, the Lord renews the consecration according to our blood as he desires. This is from the Lord, my brother, and the Lord renews the blood of consecration in us. Watch this now. And Noah and Ner hastened and washed the child and clothed it in priestly raiment and gave it the blessed bread, as I described earlier. Melchizedek gave Abraham blessed bread. The Mashiach gave his Talmudim blessed bread, not bread from Kroger or from Food Lion. No. Blessed bread. They hastened and washed the child and clothed it in priestly raiment and gave it the blessed bread and ate. And they called the baby's name Melchizedek. Let's read on. And Noah and Ner took the body of Sapanama and stripped from her the black robes, because the black robes represents disgrace and dishonor, and clothed her in very bright robes and built a church for her. Now, church is a tombs were also looked as churches. Okay, funerary temples. They were honorable monuments where people recognized and respected those that died in righteousness. All right. So it says church, it's talking about a tomb, but it's a funerary tomb in honor and righteousness, honoring those that died in righteousness. And to prove that, as we read through scriptures, and we can even prove this now, even in the canonized writings, when Joseph of Arimathea, who was a righteous man, wanted to place the Mashiach in his tomb. Okay, so you just don't throw a person that's righteous and just in, they call it, I think it's in New York, it's called the when people they don't have like a lot of money, I think they call it like the potter's tomb or something like this. There's a place where people that don't have money, they bury them there. And there was a custom where during those times, wicked men, they were just not honored. So they wasn't given an honorable death. So anyway, let me just keep this up. I think everybody understands that here. And clothed her in very bright robes and built a church for her, another house, which means a beautiful grave. And Noah and Ner and Melchizedek came and buried her publicly. And Noah said unto Ner, watch this child in secret to the time, because deceitful people shall arise over all the earth and shall begin to reject God, and having perceived nothing, shall put him to death, meaning Melchizedek, the baby here. And then Noah went out to his own place, and great lawlessness began to multiply over the whole earth in the days of Ner. And Ner began to be very anxious, especially about the child, saying, Woe is me, eternal Lord, and my days have begun to multiply all kinds of lawlessness upon the earth, and I understand how how the end is near unto us more than ever, and upon all the earth for the lawlessness of the people. And now, Lord, what is the vision and what is the solution of it? And what shall I do for the child? Will it also go with us to destruction? And the Lord heard Ner and appeared to him in a nightly vision, said to him, Ner, I do not endure the great lawlessness that has been on the earth in many things. And lo, I wish now to send a great destruction upon the earth, and every earthly creature shall perish. But do not trouble thyself about the child Ner, for in a short time I will send my chief captain Michael, Mikael, and he should take the child and place him in the paradise of Eden, in the garden where Adam was formerly, during a period of 7 years, during the heaven always having the heaven always open into the time of his sin. And this child shall not perish with those who perish in this generation, as I have shown, but shall be a holy priest in all things. Melchizedek, I will appoint him that he be the chief of the priests who were before, that they have Aliyah Lectico, that he may be a priest of priests forever. The Melchizedek priesthood is a priesthood of priests forever. The Levitical priesthood is not a priesthood or priest forever. That's the reason why I brought out, I believe it's in the book of Hebrews, to which of the angels have I said at any time, sit thou at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool? This priesthood that we're talking about in the book of Hebrews is an everlasting priesthood. Even those literal Melchizedek priests died, the priesthood continued to run throughout time, to it brings us now to the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, meaning that this Melchizedek priest, Adam being that prototype, was pointing to Yahushua Ha'Mashiach. And 2 more slides and we're done. And place him in the paradise of Eden for preservation, because the time draws near, and I will discharge all the water, discharge all the water from earth, and all that is upon the earth shall perish. And I will establish another race, and Melchizedek shall be the chief of the priests in that family, just as Seth is to me in this family. Wow. And Michael hastened and came by night, and Ner was sleeping in his bed. And Michael appeared to him and said unto him, The Lord said unto thee, Ner, send the child to me. I entrusted him to thee. I entrusted him to thee. And Ner did not know that the chief captain Michael was speaking to him. And his heart was confused, and said, If the people know about the child and take him, they will slay him. For the heart of this people is crafty before the face of the Lord. And Ner said unto him, who spoke to him, The child is not with me, and I do not know who thou art. Who are speaking to me? And he who was speaking to me answered, Be not afraid, Ner, I am the chief captain of the Lord. The Lord hath sent me, and lo, I will take the child today, and go with him, and will place him in paradise of Eden, and there shall he be forever. And when the 12th generation shall be, 1,070 years shall be, In that generation, a man shall be born. You didn't hear me. You didn't hear me. You didn't hear me. Let's hear some prophecy here. And when the 12th generation shall be, and 1,070 years shall be, in that generation a just man shall be born. And the Lord shall tell him to come out upon the mountain where the ark of thy brother Noah shall stand. And he shall find another Melchizedek, who has lived there 7 years, concealing him from the people who worship idols, so that they should not slay him. And he shall lead them forth, and he shall be a priest, and the first king in the town of Salem. I'm here to share that the word Salem is an epithet for Jerusalem. And if you don't believe it, it is also documented in the book of Josephus. And the priest king of the town of Salem, who Abraham met now, because we need to know about Abraham and the 12th generation. I hope everybody's following along. And he shall lead forth, and he shall be a priest, and the first king in the town of Salem, after the fashion of Melchizedek. The commencement of the priests, and 3,432 years shall be fulfilled till that time, from the beginning into the creation of Adam. And from that Melchizedek there shall be 12 priests, and the number till the great Igumen, that is to say, leader, who shall bring forth all things. Watch this, watch this. Who shall bring forth all things visible, invisible, visible. Did we just read something like that in Colossians, the first chapter, verses 15 to 18? Just wondering. And Ner understood his first dream and believed it. And having answered Michael, he said, Blessed is the Lord, who has glorified thee today to me. And now bless thy servant Ner, as we are drawing near our departure from this world, and take the child and do unto him as the Lord has spoken to thee. And Michael took the child on that night on which he came, and took him on his wings and placed him in paradise of Eden. And Ner, having risen on the following day, went into his house and did not find the child. And there was instead of joy, great sorrow, because he had no other son except this, because this is the last slide, Mr. Picard. This is the last one. Because he looked upon this child in the place of his own son. So died Ner also. And after him, there was no priest among the people. And from that time, great confusion over the earth. And this is when Noah steps on the scene. And God called Noah on the mountain of Ararat, between Assyria and Armenia, in the land of Arabia, by the sea, and said to him, Make thee an ark of 300 ells. I'll read this. It's only a little bit, because I wanted to stop there. But I'll read just this part here, and then I'll end it. And if anybody have any questions or rebuttals, I'll try my best to answer it. I'll try my best to answer the question, all right? If I'm not able to give you an answer today, I'm not going to give you some bogus answer. I'll come back and give you an answer, all right? I'm not going to make up anything. And God called Noah unto the mount of Ararat, between Assyria and Armenia, in the land of Arabia by the sea, and said to him, Make thee an ark of 300 ells in length, and in breadth 500 ells, in height 30, and in 2 stories in the midst, and the doors of it all. Actually, we read this right here. We all know what this says here, all right? So I just wanted to bring this to the Mr. Picard's attention. I don't really want to take up too much more of your time, but I really do. In all sincerity, I thank you for hanging out with me this long. And right now, I am open for any questions in regards to Abraham being the prototype of the Melchizedek order, with the first one being Adam. And I believe that I've showed and demonstrated some important information here about prototypes and looking at how this whole thing plays out.
So if there's any questions, by all means, let's have them, and I'll try my best again to answer the questions. Okay, hallelujah. All right. But once again, Mishpachah, I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And until the next time, I pray that everyone have a blessed day. May the Father be with you, continue with you in spirit and truth. And I'm going to say shalom, shalom. Have a blessed rest of the day.
Shalom,
Somebody has
shalom, Maury. Maury, that was a great lesson. Thank you.
Okay, Tzadar Rabah. Tzadar Rabah. I'm glad that you were able to make it, my brother. And also, too, share the link to Covenant House Ministries. And if anybody wanted the notes here, I'm going to be adding the notes to Covenant House Ministries in the description box because Morey Eliyahu, Morey Abad Yahu does an excellent job on Clubhouse. And the latest video can actually be found on YouTube. And listen to the message. It is definitely there, Bishbakar. So if no one has, again, any questions, one more quick thing. Let's see. If anyone was interested, the title of the class that was done yesterday is called the Melchizedek Marriage Series in Moray, and it's at Covington House Ministries. And again, just Google into your YouTube search engine, or just type it in the Melchizedek Marriage Series intro. The class was done yesterday. They did a very good job. And again, this is at Covington House Ministry.
Hey,
Check
Mark,
it out.
stop by. I just posted the link on the chat.
Oh, okay, great, hallelujah. So that's also there too. All right, Ms. McCall, I'm going to say shalom, shalom. Okay, until the next time, have a blessed day.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Mikael, brother, I was waiting for you, my brother. I mean, you was the one that brought out the whole information, the secrets, brother. Brother,
Man,
I was waiting for
man,
you.
you covered it. You covered it in detail. I didn't need to say anything. You hit it. You nailed it. I mean, if anybody, had any disagreements or something, then I'm here, I'm here to elaborate, but you covered it. And our audience, they seem like they digested it pretty well. So we're gonna let them chew on that for a little while. We here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad that you was there because again, when you brought that to my attention, again, the adversary was so busy. I was at work and everything like that. Like, listen, my brother, you have to read this here. And when you showed that to me, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, stop the train. I had to pull over and actually read this. And as you was parsing this out, my brother, and you was showing me some stuff, I was like, wow, I have to definitely put this into this the presentation slide show that I did today. I had to.
Hallelujah. I mean, the only thing that I would add is that
Okay.
we know that the Mashiach says, just as in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Well, when you read that, we know that this story of Ner are things that took place in the days of Noah. So we got to look at that.
King, absolutely, for sure.
So,
Okay, Mr. Bakai, you go ahead and enjoy your time with your family. Once again, I appreciate it. Thank you, Tadar Rabah. And until the next time, have a great evening.
Shalom.